connector from here papunta dito.
Hello. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I'd like to apologize, no? Sorry. Medyo hindi ko akalain na mayroong ginagawa kasi ng mga bandang Cubao. Yung isang lane doon, sinarahan nila, sinisemento. So, we were held for something like about mga 45 minutes dun sa lugar na yon, no? Medyo natagalan. Tapos dito rin sa may Kawayan, meron din. Grabe. Hindi ko akalain na, kasi normally it takes me, sa San Fernando, it takes me only 45 minutes from Balintawak, but this time talaga it really took us a long, long time. So, medyo natagalan. Sorry, I really apologize. Hopefully, I'm given your indulgence, no? Sorry. But anyway,
Kunin namin sa USB. Play namin doon. Is it okay?
tamo na sandali. Paano ba?
Ano po ba? Dapat nakakonect po doon?
Okay, i-connect sana ito. Pero there's several kasi. Tatlo to eh.
PowerPoint po.
PowerPoints na ito. 3 lessons. So, paano natin kukunin? Okay. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Hello. Okay. One of the things that is quite important, no, when it comes to church audio is intelligibility. In other words, as much as you can, dapat yung tunog ng inyong simbahan klarong-klaro. That's the most important thing. In other words, hindi kailangan na guwapo yung tunog. Ang importante, naiintindihan. So in this case, if you've noticed, there's still a lot of low frequency. So, sino yung tech natin? Sino yung tech natin? Si Norman? Okay, ganito yung boses ko, 250 Hertz, bawasan mo ng mga 10 dB. 250 Hertz. Pakilagay yung high pass filter. Hello. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Na? Parang walang change eh. 250? Hello. Sa mic nito, na EQ na. 1, 2. Pakilagay 250 Hertz, tapos bawasan ng 10 dB. Hello. 1, 2. Nagawa? Okay. Now, this is another thing that is quite important. I know a lot of you are actually volunteers. Karamihan ba volunteers? No? Volunteers in a lot of churches. Now, this is the thing. If you are in audio, ang learning curve ituloy-tuloy, hindi humihinto. Now, that's the other thing. For example, sinabi ko doon, if you notice, there's already a change. Napansin nyo? Ngayon may SS. No? Sobra naman. Okay. So, yung 10K, pakibawasan ng mga 5 dB. Hello. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Nagawa? Nagawa na? If you've noticed, nawala na yung sagitsit. Now, this is what I want you to understand. Sa audio kasi, sa pro audio, we have a language. So, nandun yung technician, nandun yung engineer, nandito ako. Sinabi ko, bawasan mo equalization ng 10 dB sa 10K. Nagkakaintindihan. Now, what I'm trying to say is this, the learning does not stop. Tuloy-tuloy yan dapat. So, if you are really serious in going into audio, not only for your churches, but also as something that you want to do. Because first of all, sasabihin ko sa inyo, if you pursue a career in audio, unless yung ginagawa nyo is really something that a lot of people go for, you won't really make as much money. Hindi ho kayo yayaman. Yun ho ang problema ng audio. It's an avocation. Nagbago. Hello? Ano yun? Lumakas? 500 hertz, pakibawasan. Hello? Hello? 1, 2. Masyado malakas yata. Pakibawasan ng konti. Hello? 500 hertz? Pakibawasan pa? Hello? 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 At saka yung SPL ko, yung volume. Pakibawasan. Anyway. Okay. So, it is really more of an avocation. No? Ako, I'm a broadcaster by profession. I used to own several radio stations, and I was involved in broadcasting ever since I was 17 years old. Way back in 1967 ho yun. Noong nag-umpisa ako sa radyo. No? And so nakita ko yung evolution ng plaka hanggang digital. So nasubukan ko lahat yun. Dinaanan ko lahat yun. So alam ko kung ano yung mga pagbabago from analog consoles to digital consoles to CDs. Masyadong sumasagitsit. Hello? Hello, hello, 1, 2. Yung higher frequency, mga 8K siguro, pakibawasan din. Hello? Nawala naman masyado. 1, 2. Hello? Okay. So, what I'm just trying to say is that, but if you love audio and you love serving the Lord, this is the way to go. Kasi the word cannot be transported to a lot of people, no? Kung hindi naiintindihan yung sinasabi ng pastor. That's actually one of the reasons why we have good sound systems, we have good acoustics for churches, and ang importante is that from the pulpit hanggang dun sa dulo, naririnig ng malinis na malinis, and at the same time, hindi masakit sa tenga. Okay? That's one. Number two, the most important thing to consider really is the source. What I'm trying to say is that if the band sounds good, if they really are good acoustically, yung wala pang sound system, that's easy to mix. Madaling i-mix. Pero kung ang problema mismo is yung banda, wala sa tempo, o mayroong napakalakas pumalo na drums, ganon, o yung gitarista, gustong-gusto niya marinig yung sarili niya, no? Ang lakas-lakas niya magpatunog, naka full stack na Marshall na matataas, no? Hindi balanse, then you would really have a lot of problems. So from the source, it is very important that yung source itself, let's say yung mga musikero, no, has to have a very good sense of musicality. In other words, dapat yung pag-pronounce nila ng words, yung tempo nila sa beat, dapat halos tama. Ako kasi, pag ako nagmi-mix, ang ginagawa ko is that I make sure that all the elements, especially sa vocals, walang mataas, walang mababa. Lahat pantay-pantay, pati yung worship leader. Dapat ganon. Why? Kasi dapat, kung apat kayo na vocalists o apat kayo na part ng banda, ng vocal ensemble, no? Dapat yun, may kanya-kanya kayong may kanya-kanya kayong boses. My first, my second, my third, my fourth voice. Dapat ginagampanan niyo yung mga boses na yun, no? Pagkatapos, you have to make sure that you know how to control your voice. For example, it is very important that you know how to hold the microphone. Ano? Ano na yung ano? Ha? Loading pa rin? Okay. Medyo, masama na yung computer na yan eh. Anyway, so it is also, okay. It is also important, no, na alam niyo paano paghawak ng mikropono. The best position for a microphone should be at least about 2 inches away from the mouth, from the source. In other words, wag niyong kainin kasi there's such a thing as what they call proximity effect. Yung proximity effect, the nearer you put your mouth or your source of sound to the microphone capsule, it becomes bassy. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nakita nyo? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tingnan nyo, nagkakaroon ng high frequency habang tinatanggal ko, no? 7. 1, 2, 3. And then the other thing is the way to hold the microphone is, kaya ho meron itong portion na ito, ang tawag ho dyan, handle. Diyan ho nilalagay ang kamay. Aside from the electronics, no? Hindi ho rito. Alam niyo kung bakit? Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Ilalagay ko yung dito, no? This microphone is supposed to be a dynamic microphone na cardioid. Ang ibig sabihin ng cardioid, if this is your microphone, ang pick-up nito pa ganon. Heart yan eh. It's a heart. Cardioid. No? So, ganon, no? Ngayon, look what happens. Pag hinawakan ko, parang kunwari, ang mangyayari is yung hawak pang hip-hop. Sila mahilig kasing ganon eh. No? Hawakan nila rito. Look what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Pag hindi ko hinawakan doon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Nakita nyo? What that means is that pag hinawakan ko rito, nagbabago ang response ng mikropono. Pagkatapos, lahat ng sides ng mikropono nagkakaroon ng signal. Ayan na. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pati hanggang dito. In other words, pwede akong kumanta dito. Diba? Okay. Now, what happens pag ganun ang ginawa mo? Feedback po. Yun. And of course, ngongo. And iba-ibang other things that can happen. That's the reason why the way to handle your microphone should always be dito po. Sa handle. Okay? And it should always be at least about 2 inches away. Wag yung ganun. Di ba? You know, cool. Cool yan eh, cool. Pero, can you imagine you're praising the Lord, nakaganun ka? It's not nice. That's actually one of the reasons why yung mga broadcasters, yung mga sa news, di ba? The way they hold their microphones is always here. Kasi they're facing a camera and they're supposed to be maintaining a particular distance. Kaya dito, kasi kailangan napipick up din yung ambience sa labas para nagbibigay ng katunayan na nandun sila sa field. Kasi pag wala yun, hindi totoo. Pwede mong pikehin. That's actually one of the reasons also why sa mga churches, normally what we do is that aside from the pastor's microphone, we use 1 or 2 other microphones na nakasabit lang somewhere, nakatutok sa congregation. Now, hindi yon para sa front of house. Yun po ay ginagamit pag kayo ay nag-stream. You get it? Anyway, we'll talk about that later on. Hopefully, we'll have enough time. Kasi medyo mahaba-haba itong tatahakin natin. No? Ayan, okay. That'll be good. Yan. Tingnan nga natin kung aabot. Ayan. Okay. So, okay. Pwedeng ilabas yung computer ng konti para makuha. Yan. Yun. Okay. So, all right. Ako ho, pangalan ko Mike Pedero. Hindi niyo ako kilala. Hindi naman ako sikat eh. But I've been designing churches and helping out churches for quite some time. No? At saka I do design also mga studios, gaya ng GMA, gaya ng TV. I was consultant for TV5 for a long time. I did some studios, or a lot of studios for ABS-CBN. Ang regular clients ko are churches nowadays, but I do a lot of studios also as well. I used to have a recording studio before na yun po ang pinagre-recordan nila Bamboo, ng Eraserheads, ng Chico Sai, ng Mayonnaise, Cynthia Alexander, Freddie Aguilar, you name it, almost everybody. But I had to close it because wala nang business sa recording eh. Wala nang ganun ngayon kasi ginagawa na lang nila sa bahay. Anyway, so, okay. So ang pag-uusapan natin is, this is basic sound system setup for small churches. Actually, your church is a medium church. But when I say a basic sound system for small churches, it does not necessarily mean that it's a basic system. Now you can actually use it kung kunwari mobile yung inyong church or you have a big church. It's basically the same thing. Pareho naman ang setup niyan eh. Ang pagkakaiba lang, hello, pakitanggal nga ng konti yung sa gitsit. Yung mga 10K siguro. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Pagkatapos pakiangat mga 3K, 3KC. 3 kilohertz. Pakiangat ng konti. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, a little bit better. Okay, so it is actually a very good basic system to understand para for you to be able to know more or less kung paano ang pag-set up. You have to understand that setting up sound systems is not an ordinary task. Hindi basta-basta. No? Okay, so, yung problema natin is this, how to achieve utmost intelligibility. Remember, intelligibility, clarity, musicality, and flexibility using basic sound system equipment in a church setting. So itong seminar na ito, we have to understand the basic sound system characteristics in terms of loudspeaker dispersion, coverage, and loudness. Yun ang tatlong importanteng bagay. No? Dispersion, paano mag-disperse yung loudspeaker. Coverage, paano mako-cover yung mga tao. And to be able to find solutions to problematic sound system situations like feedback, lack of intelligibility, limited reach, poor sound quality, especially the effects of over-reverberant characteristic of worship halls. Actually, itong hall na ito was designed primarily with a little reverb in mind. Now, hindi mo kasi pwedeng patayin totally yung kwarto. Pag overdamped kasi naman yung kwarto, pag puno-puno ng absorbers, gaya nitong yan, that's an absorber system, no? Ito. This is an absorber. Those are absorbers, mga kulay brown na yan. No? Pag pinuno mo naman ng ganun, pag namatay, totally, walang high frequency. And it doesn't sound good. Hindi normal. Kasi ang pandinig natin is that we have to hear a certain amount of high frequency because nandun yung speech natin, nandun yung intelligibility. Okay, so yun ang mga pag-aaralan natin. Okay, ito yung signal flow, no? First, these are the things that are important. One, yung loudspeaker systems natin, amplifiers, mixers, effects, or outboard gears, certain acoustic or electroacoustic theories and practices, and then microphones. Pag-aaralan din natin yun, types, mic techniques, sana, and then voice and performance techniques, yun ang source, no? Okay. Hindi kaya? Yun. Okay. Unang-una, pag-usapan natin kung ano yung mga klase ng loudspeakers na ginagamit. There are several, but mainly 3 are the ones that are being used a lot now, no? In a lot of churches. Not only in churches, but also in other situations. For example, even sa mga live sound applications, ito ang mga ginagamit na loudspeaker systems na ginagamit. First is point source systems. Point source systems are the same as this. Kapareho nito. This is a point source system. No? Yung nakaturong ganyan. May mga characteristics yan. Okay? Now, point source, ang mga points, again, itong nandito sa taas, ang ginawa nila, in-array nila yung loudspeaker systems dun sa itaas. Ang tawag dyan, center cluster. Mukhang simbahang katoliko to eh. No? Yes. I've actually done a few churches, Catholic churches. Nag-aayos na sila ngayon. I did one dyan sa may Our Lady of Guadalupe sa Pampanga eh. I forgot the name. But it's a church na pang-5 na yata yung sound system na ikinabit nila. Hindi pa rin tumama. No? So inayos ko yung acoustics nung lugar, kinabitan ko ng mga columnar type loudspeakers, ayun, solve ang problema. So, again, What is important is that you should understand how things are supposed to go. It's not just a matter of tapal dito, tapal doon, bili tayo ng line array kasi yan ang ginagamit ng lahat ng mga gumagamit ng ano ngayon, ng sound system, yung ganun. Hindi ho ganun. Everything has to be computed, calculated, and it has to be done in a mathematical way. For example, itong simbahan natin ito was actually computed with with acoustic math in mind. For example, pag nagsalita ako ng ganito, naririnig niyo ba ako? Doon, dinig niyo ako? Maliwanag? That is how it should be. Dapat, pag maski na malayong malayo, nagkakaintindihan pa rin tayo. The sound system is only placed to reinforce. Kaya ang tawag sa sound system, sound reinforcement. Narinig nyo na yun, no? Sound reinforcement. The reason behind that is because you are supposed to reinforce the sound. Kaya sound reinforcement. Front of house, because nasa harap ng nakaturo yung mga loudspeakers na yun sa audience. And then you have your monitors naman, na nasa likod. Okay, so let's go back to, saan siya? Ayun. Yung point source system, ito mga advantages. Versatile siya, ease of deployment, mas kinakunwari yung nakatubo lang na gano'n, lalagay natin dyan. Pag tinama mo yung aiming, okay na, nagkakaintindihan. Because you have to understand that sound travels not in a spherical manner, no? Pabilog ang tapo ng sound. Hindi pa ganun, o hindi diretso. Yung high frequencies, yes, diretso. Pero habang bumababa ang frequency mo, nagiging bilog. Kaya yung subwoofer na yan, pag yung subwoofer na yan, nilagay natin doon, kung ano yung effect dyan, the same. Kung ano yung effect doon, o effect ng whatever. But there are also concerns. For example, pag hiniwalay mo ito at saka hiniwalay mo yun, masyadong malayo, there's a possibility magkakaroon ng phase problems. See, ang daming factors. Now, pag nasa front siya, this is actually a null point. Kasi ang waves, left and right yan ang tenga natin Left and right So, ang mangyayari ngayon, yung waves, pag tama dyan sa wall na yun, pupunta rito sa gitna. Yung doon, sa kabila, pupunta rin sa gitna. Yung area na to, that's the reason why it's called null point, is because dito nagka-cancel. Dito nagka-cancel yung waves. That's the reason why normally in a lot of churches, in theaters, and auditoriums, yung gitna walang tao. Alam niyo kung bakit? Kasi walang sound sa gitna. Walang intelligibility dyan. Yung gitna na yan, puro bass ang maririnig mo. Kung tutuusin, kung susukatin mo. No? Because iba kasi ang pandinig ng mikrofono at saka ng tenga natin. Magkaiba yan Iba ang pandinig ng mikrofono o yung mga measurement microphones o measurement instruments compared sa tenga natin. Dual yung pandinig natin Duo, dalawa, left and right At saka hindi lang yon. Ito, sinishield yung nadidinig natin dito But that's another story. We'll talk about that later on. Which reminds me, if you have some questions right now, and hindi klaro, gusto nyong itanong, just raise your hands para ma-answer natin. We'll try as much as we can to answer all your questions. No? Kasi ang importante rito is that I would be able to give you whatever I know and that I'll be able to help you out in your quest for better sounding churches. So yun ang importante. Okay? Alright. So, madaling i-set up ang point source systems. And then, depending on the size of the cabinet and the horn, yung pattern ng coverage niya normally is frontal yan Pero yung low frequency, parang ganito rin, no? Ang mangyayari, from top, no? Ang high frequency, pag ganon, ang tapon. Yung mid frequency, pag ganon. Yung bass, pag ganon. Okay? That's the reason why, if you've noticed, if you go at the back of a loudspeaker, ang nangyayari is that it's more bassy than usual. Kasi yung high frequency niya, yung horns ng loudspeakers is towards the front. Okay? So yun ang sistema. Okay. Now, the other thing also, yung horizontal coverage niya, you can actually control the pattern of the horizontal and the vertical coverage. Anong ibig sabihin nun? By just angling them. For example, if you want more coverage towards, let's say, palagay natin the back, ituturo mo yun. Kaya lang, since most point source loudspeakers, ang ano niyan, kunwari, ito yung loudspeaker, no? Ito, your horizontal is normally 40 degrees. Yung vertical, normally 60 degrees. Again, it depends on what kind of loudspeaker you're using. Now, this is the thing. Habang lumiliit yung loudspeaker mo, nagiging omnidirectional. You get it? Habang lumalaki yung loudspeaker mo, nagiging more directional. So, for example, kung nari gaya nun, di 12 yun o 15. I think 15 no? 12 ba o 15? Ha? 15 nga siguro. Anyway, so habang lumalaki yan, ang nangyayari is that nagiging directional ang pattern. Now, yung mga maliliit na loudspeaker, gaya ng mga ginagamit nyo sa computer, yun, no? Ang naging dispersion nun, naging omni. You get it? That's the reason why may mga maliliit na pinapatong mo lang na gano'n na ang ganda-ganda ng tunog. Nagtataka kayo. Because that is the nature of how loudspeakers are. Ganon talaga. Okay. So you can actually control the pattern of the horizontal and the vertical coverage by angling down, sideways, left, right, whatever. No? Ganon ang ginagawa. Ang normal na ginagawa namin, kung kunwari point source ang ginagamit, is that dun sa dulong-dulo, we make sure na yung dulo, yung dulo ron, ayaw umabot. Anyway, yung dulo ron, doon nakaturo yung high frequency. You get it? Ganito yan. Palagay natin, loudspeaker 1, loudspeaker 2. Ito yung dulo, dyan namin tinuturo. And kung kunwari nakaganon, andito yung loudspeaker, nakaturo siya in such a way that this is about 1 meter. Now, that is not written in stone. Okay? Yan lang ang guide namin para more or less ang dispersion tama. So, tetingahin nyo ngayon yun. There are a lot of ways of doing it. First, you can measure. There are a lot of mga SPL meters that you can actually download, no? I suppose, lahat tayo may cellphone, so I suppose you can always download some of yung mga Android SPL meters, no? Na you can actually make use of para malaman nyo kung lumalakas. SPL meters, alam niyo, no? Okay, so yun. So titignan nyo kung anong area yung medyo malakas ng konti, no? Itataas yung ganyan, bababa, na, no? Oh, ito. Okay, hanggang makita nyo na yun na. You really have to understand that the best instrument when it comes to audio is still the ear. But of course, it helps kung mayroon kayong computer, for example. Yung mga iba, they go really for something like smart, for example, yung mga ganun, and some other software that they use, no, to measure. These are very good guides. Now, the problem is, how do you interpret? Fine, na-measure nyo, nakita yung curve, gumaganon. Oh, ano ngayon? Diba? Anong ibig sabihin nun? May ganun. So what? Okay? Now, what do you do? And that's one of the things that I see with a lot of these people in audio. Again, what is important is you study, you research. YouTube has a lot of those things, but you just have to be careful. Kasi not everything sa YouTube is true. Hindi lahat ng nandun, karamihan dun mali. Okay? So you just have to be very careful, check, double check, fact check. Okay? All right. Now, sa point source system, gaya nito, cost-effective kasi mas fewer components. So, hindi siya kamahalan. Okay? Okay. Ang disadvantage naman nun, walang masyadong low frequency. Kasi, yung laki niya eh. That's the reason why most subwoofers actually have 18 or dual ang ginagamit and everything else because lower ang frequency niyan, no? Now, in the case of point source, walang masyadong low frequency because maliit eh, yung loudspeaker by itself, yun ang limitation niya. Vertically, they are smaller, so their response do not go down. It does not go down to low frequencies, no? Now, your challenge here in making use of point source would be how to array it. Yung gaya ng church kanina, no? That was actually an array. This is an array. May sukat yan eh, bawat ano. Actually, ang sukat dapat niyan is that kung ano yung length ng loudspeaker, yung dapat ang distance bawat isa. So, palagay natin, that's about, let's say, 3 feet. Kunwari, palagay natin, 2.5 feet. Dapat yung layo niyan, mga 2.5 feet din. More or less. More or less. Again, things do not really hold or are not written in stone. Again, pakinggan nyo. Kung nagkakaroon ng phase problems, then baguhin. Okay? So again, these are just guidelines that you can actually make use of. Alright? And then, yung limitation ng throw. Yung throw kasi, konti lang kasi ang point source eh. And then there's such a thing as what they call inverse square law. Inverse square law means that for every doubling of distance, you lose 6 dB. Ibig sabihin nun, pag point source ang ginamit mo, because of the characteristic of the loudspeaker, pag lumayo ka, let's say palagay natin dito, sinukat ko 1 meter away, no? Let's say 100 dB ang lumalabas, pag dumoble ako dito, pag sinukat ko uli, minus 6 dB na. So, pagdating dito, 94 dB na lang yun. Okay? That's the reason why, as much as you can, the monitor speakers should be as close to the user as it can be. Which means, palagay natin, ito yung worship leader, dapat nasa paanan niya. Get it? Kasi pag lumayo ka ng ganyan, iba na yung tunog niyan. Nagbago na yan. Minus 6 dB na yan. You have to understand that those loudspeakers are actually point source speakers also. No, they're the same as these ones. Now, if that happens, what do? You put in fill speakers. For example, yung mga fill speakers na yun nasa likod natin. Yun. Those are fill speakers para magbato rin siya ng konting tunog. Pero dapat, ang pinakamalakas sa lahat would be these loudspeakers. Ang mangyayari is that dapat, pag nandun ka sa likod, ang nadidinig mong tunog, hindi yung speaker na yun, kundi yung speaker na yan. So, yung fill speaker na yan, dapat tinatanggalan ng bass. Kasi intelligibility lang. Dapat lumalabas. That's one. Number 2, dapat nakadelay yan dun. Naguguluhan na ba kayo? Maraming tatahakin. Dapat naka-delay. Kasi ganito yan eh. Ang sound kasi travels at 1,133 feet per second or 344 meters per second. 1133 feet per second. Ako kasi, I don't use ang ginagamit ko pa rin yung feet, no? Pag, in other words, doon sa aking mga calculations, mayroon akong nilalagay ko lang yung meters tapos automatically tinatranspose niya into feet. Ang meters kasi, you divide meters by 3.28 feet para lumabas yung feet. Okay? You have to understand that audio, whether you're mixing, you're designing, you're setting up, or whatever, involves a lot of math. Yan ang importante. Okay. Ang speed of sound, 1,133 feet per second, ibig sabihin nun, for every 1 second, no? Ganito. Approximately 1 second is equivalent to 1 foot. You get it? So, palagay natin yung loudspeaker na yon from here to there. Palagay natin, sinabi natin, that's about ilang feet yan? 30 feet. Okay. Dapat ang delay nun, 30 milliseconds. I-delay nyo yun by 30 milliseconds. In reality, it should be 47 seconds to one foot. But approximately, for easier handling, ginagawa na lang namin 1:1. 1 millisecond is equivalent to 1 foot. Okay? And then, titingahin nyo ngayon. The way to do it, the simplest way to do it, no, is you put, click track. Pag nagsabay na yon, that means okay ka na. Pag nagsabay na yon at saka ito, okay ka na, nandun kayo. Doon kayo nakikinig. Okay? Question so far, okay lang? Okay. Continue. Yes. Aha. Ano na? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tama na. Tama na. Sinihan. Okay. Ang ginagamit yung sound system ng sinihan. May sarili kayo. Okay. So, gaano kataas yun? Yeah, naka-pole yun. Panong three-way, 3 loudspeakers ang ginagamit nyo? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Paano sa papunta sa taas? Okay, so maglagay ka ng field speakers papunta dun sa taas. In other words, huwag mong gamitin yun dito because ito would take care of your lower portion. Hindi. Dapat ituro mo yun. Like for example, kunwari nandito yung loudspeaker, kunwari ako yung loudspeaker, di ba? Yung pangalan to, yung tweeter nun, no? Yung compression driver, nasa gitna. No? Okay. So yung nasa gitnang na yun, subukan mo kung pwede mong ituro, kung naka-tripod na pwede mong i-tilt. Iti-tilt mo dun sa likod. Sa likod nung, ha? Well, kung kasi sinihan normally wala namang under the balcony yun Oo, di ba? So, ituturo mo dun sa before the balcony. Although before nung araw tawag namin dun lodge Hindi nyo inabot yun no? Nung araw kasi, 3 ang upuan. Meron kang orchestra, meron kang lodge, tsaka meron kang yung sa taas mismo, which is actually your balcony. No? So nakaturo yun, yung 2 loudspeakers mo, tapos maglagay ka ngayon ng ganito yan. Actually, pag-uusapan natin mamaya yun pero sige na. Ganyan. Mayroon kayong stage. Okay. Dito nakalagay ito. Okay, so this one takes care of this. Ituro mo to banda rito. See, you have to understand that there's a portion also from here that actually goes all the way up. So nakukuha pa rin. Now, if it's not intelligible, you put dito to take care of this portion. Sa taas na taas? Well, you have, depende kasi okay, ang sistema kasi ganito, normally, ito yung daanan Doon ka magkakaroon ng space para magtayo ng tripod. Doon mo ilagay. Kasi, pag nilagay mo rito, wala na ito. Di ba? You have to understand that naturally, habang lumalayo ka, humihina, inverse square law. Yung sinabi ko kanina, habang lumalayo ka sa source ng sound, humihina Like for example, in the case of a point source, 6 dB yung layo. Diba? So the same thing with people. Palagay natin yung boses ko, magkaharap tayo at 1 meter, sinukat mo, let's say 70 dB, pag lumayo ako ng double the distance, so that means 2 times. No? So that's 1 meter minus 2, kasi 2 times Diba? Double the distance. So mga 3 meters ang layo ko ngayon. Okay? Yung 70 dB na boses ko na naririnig mo, now it becomes minus 6. So 64 dB. Now the same. It has to be made in such a way that it is natural. It has to be as natural as it can be. There's another thing that is not regular and which a lot of people mistake in doing, which is placing loudspeakers at the back of the hall. Kasi, that's not natural. When I'm talking with you guys, I don't talk this way. Okay ba tayo dyan? Ayos ba? Nakaharap kayo sa akin pero yung likod ko diba? Or, nagsasalita ako, nakatingin kayo sa akin, pero yung boses ko narinig nyo galing sa likod. Is that normal? No. Diba? Because the brain only perceives what is natural. For example, kunwari tinawag ko kayo, Oy, Mike, kumusta ba? Alangan namang tatalikod ka. Sabi, okay lang ako. Diba? You don't do it that way. So you face, right? Because that's normal. So never put a fill speaker at the back of the hall. Kasi hindi normal. Anong magiging effect? Ang effect ho nun, paglabas nyo ng simbahan, masakit ang ulo nyo. It's the same thing as just a moment ago. That's actually the reason why ginaganon ko itong mikrofonong to. Kasi I'm trying to equalize my voice. Now, it's not as bad as kanina na sumasagit-sit, di ba? Kasi wala na yung wala yung eksaktong tapon ng boses ko dun sa dun sa capsule eh. Habang gumaganon kasi ako, that means nawawala ang high frequency. Okay? So the same way, you can actually equalize your voices, you can actually put volume to your voice. A lot of ways, no? Okay? So ang solution doon is that. But anyway, it's part of the lecture. Mamaya, mas ano natin. Okay. Ito, pag-array. Bakit nawala yung... Nawala yung ano? Meron pa rin? Dito okay. Anyway, so this is actually an example of a simple line array system. Okay? So, tapos na tayo dun sa point source. Yung ganung klase is point source. Pag napakarami na ng loudspeakers na sunod-sunod, ganun, normally, those are line array speakers. Yung iba kasi, yung ginagawa nila, yung point source, ginagawa nilang line array. Hindi tama yon. You'll have some problems doing it that way. Kasi you have to understand that the loudspeaker, yung mga point source speakers, ang sukat niyan patayo eh. Pag nakatayo ang ganyan, eto 60 degrees. Eto 40 degrees. Pag ginanon mo, ano mangyayari? Magiging 60 degrees to. Magiging 40 degrees to. So, ang coverage mo on your vertical, ay on your horizontal plane, liliit. Di ba? Mali na eh. Is 60-40. Which is actually different from line arrays. Kasi, ano nangyari? Ha? Sa LED? Oh, okay. Oh. Yun nga, ang mangyayari ngayon, ang difference kasi ng line array doon sa mga point source, first of all, we'll continue muna. Maski na wala muna kayo nakikita. Nawala? Ngayon. Okay, ang advantage ng line array is that there is consistent sound level. Kasi multiple cabinets yan eh. And angling characteristics provide easier coverage adjustments. Now you have to understand na ang coverage ng isang strip ng line array, is sometimes 20. In other words, yung pagganon niya, mga 20 degrees, sometimes 30 degrees, depende, as compared to yung 40 degrees. Mas manipis. Tapos, yung yung pataas niya, normally, 90 degrees, minsan 110, minsan 130. So, depende kung anong klaseng line array ang ginagamit nyo. Yun naman, in other words, wider ang coverage niya. Kasi nga naman, yun ang kailangan eh. It has to have a wider coverage as compared to the vertical. Ang horizontal ang importante. That's the reason why ang ginagamit nila, dalawang boxes lang, okay na. No? Kasi nga, napakalapad ang coverage niya. Okay. The other thing is that habang habang ina-array mo, no, nagiging eksakto yung pinupuntirya mo, no? Kumbaga yung point source pasabog ang dispersion, ang line array point source ay ang line array talagang to the point kung saan yung tatama. Pwede ko pa bang i-manipulate yung ano? Ha? Yung sa computer? Ayun. So that's the reason why a lot of churches nowadays, auditoriums for that matter, are making use of line arrays more than yung ordinary point source loudspeakers. Yun lang, mas mahal. And of course, depende kung ano yung klaseng ginagamit mo. Ang palagi nga namin sinasabi is that you get what you pay for. In other words, kung kunwari, palagay natin, gagamit ka ng Acoustics or Meyer or ano pa ba yung mga ibang brands na maski na FBT or ano yung kay Mario Belipayo, RCF, for example. See, medyo nasa mga higher tiers, no? These are loudspeakers that will work well. Ang high-end loudspeaker kasi, yung ikinabit ko sa Union Church of Manila, UCM, sa Makati, anong pangalan to? But that's not a line array kasi nung araw wala pang line array nung ginawa namin yung simbahan that has been in service for something like 15-20 years. Gumagana pa hanggang ngayon. Kaya lang, nagsawa na lang sila, kaya pinalitan, nilagyan ng RCF na columnar line array. And it works. Okay naman siya. So, you really get what you pay for. The more expensive your loudspeaker is, no? The more it is efficiently. But you have to understand that loudspeakers that are very expensive are really very expensive. Yung nakakabit sa CCF, pinalitan na kasi nila yung line array nila doon. Originally, that's Renkus Hines. And they're not fully satisfied with that loudspeaker. Ngayon, pinalitan nila ng Acoustics. If I'm not mistaken, that costs something like about 13 million. Loudspeaker lang. Hindi pa kasama yung mga amplifiers, hindi kasama ang mixer. Yung Digico nila would cost siguro mga 10. So, it really depends, no? Ako, personally, it's good to have mga good systems. But my question normally is, do we really need it? Does the church need it? Or will we use the money for something else? Di ba? For saving the souls of other people. Gamitin na lang natin sa ganon. Ang importante lang naman is nagkakarinigan tayo, nagkakaintindihan tayo. Di ba? There is one church that I was consulting before, and there was one meeting that they had, and the worship team was suggesting that they buy this guitar. Alam niyo kung magkano yung gitara? 250,000 pesos. Ako bumagsak ako sa upuan ko . You know, I'm a guitar player. I'm a guitarist. No? I used to do some, I still have a band now. Mga matatanda na sa banda namin. No? I have more than 50 guitars. And these are very expensive ones. But what I'm just trying to say is this. Sa simbahan ba, na nakapag-experience na kayo na may nagsabi sa inyo na, wow, na-bless ako kasing ganda ng tunog ng gitara. Meron bang ganon? Hindi ba? Ang palagi kong sinasabi, pag nagsama-sama na lahat yan, whether lumanog yung gitara mo or whatever, basta magandang ang performance, maganda ang balanse, tinamaan ka sa puso. Tapos ang kwento. Di ba? You don't need a 250,000 peso guitar or a drum set. No? So I mean, these are things na ang nangyayari kasi parang ano na eh, parang nagiging luho. And it's not the important thing. Siguro place of worship, like for example, this one, of course, it's nice, to worship in a place na when you sit down, it's comfortable, malamig, yung ganon, pero hindi ka antukin. Kasi may mga churches ganon eh. Pag umupo ka, ang sarap umupo, ang sarap ng air conditioner, tulog. Especially, di ba, maski na sa mga Catholic churches, di ba? That's a usual thing. Well, the reason behind that is because yung mga pare din ang may problema eh. The message that they're trying to impart to the people is not enough to titillate the minds of people. Di ba? So, these are things that have to be considered. So, anyway, going back to line arrays, saan ba tayo? Ayun. Sa line array, putol pa rin. Sa line array, you can actually control the vertical pattern. The taller, habang mas malaki, mas mahaba, the better is your low frequency characteristic. Kaya ang dami-dami nilang nilalagay. Minsan 13, minsan 12. So depende, no? 8 per side, normal 4 per side, 8 per side, 12 per side, 13, 24 per side. Merong tinayo sila sa Clark today. It's actually Acoustics. Kasi meron silang balloon festival doon eh. Saka they have a concert na doon ng Ben and Ben. And they had something like about 14 yata eh, na array per side. Tapos meron pang side fills, no? Now, I mean, fine, it's good. Well, it's an open field. But you don't need that for a church. Unless your church is like an Araneta Coliseum. No? Pero normally, tayo naman, hindi natin kailangan ng malaking-malaki. No? So, just enough. So, the way it is that with line arrays, yung mas mahaba, mas maganda ang control mo sa low frequency. And of course, the better control of your vertical pattern and yung unwanted reflection on the rear part, nawawala. And then of course, higher SPL. Sa line array nga pala, sa point source, yung layo mo, doubling of distance ng point source, 6 dB. Sa line array, 3 dB. Kaya umaabot hanggang likod. So, yon ang sistema niyan. So, it has higher SPL capability kasi multi-driver yung sistema niya. No? And assures single coherent wavefront. Yung wavefront mo, consistent all the way hanggang sa likod. Okay? Okay. Ang disadvantage naman niya, you can't use it for very shallow rooms. Kasi masyadong malaki ang spread eh. So pag ginamitan mo at saka normally, the reason why they use 2 loudspeakers is because that's primarily more for music purposes. But normally, when you're mixing music, including in churches, normally, I'm not saying it's not possible, but normally, ang mix po natin is mono. Sino nagmi-mix in stereo? Meron bang nagmi-mix in stereo here? May mga mixers ba tayo dito? Di ba? Okay. Normally, You mix in mono. Why? Kasi hindi mo pwedeng gawin yung stereo masyado eh. The reason behind that is pag kunwari yung isang gitara nilagay ko sa hard left, yung isang gitara nilagay ko sa hard right, yung nakaupo rito, punong-puno ng hard left na gitar, hindi nila naririnig yung hard left na guitar on that side. Tama? Di ba? Now, how do you do that if you want to mix in stereo? Soft left, soft right. You can still mix in stereo. I mix in stereo. Actually, the other thing is yung drums. You know, rarely, when I mix drums for live situations, I only use the most 3 microphones. 3 microphones. Why? Because the drum kit in itself is very loud. You don't need to mic each tom. You only use that in recording studio situation. Kasi pinapan mo yun. You only use 3 mics, 2 mics. Sa banda namin, yung banda namin spoiled eh. We have line arrays. Banda, we own line arrays. Yung mga drums namin, they're exceptional. We have a copy of the original Who drum kit. Alam niyo ba yung Who? Hindi niyo alam yung Who? Sila Pete Townsend. It's a band nung araw na these are very famous. You know, the reason behind that is yung aming keyboardista may-ari ng audiophile. Yung drummer namin, dating commissioner. We play every Wednesday among ourselves. We have our own practice place. Andun lahat yung mga instrumento namin. Doon kami nag-experiment. Wala kaming ibang tinutugtugan kundi sarili lang namin. Just to keep us posted. And that's where experiment. We put, whatever. We test equipment. Pag wala kaming magamit na amplifier, pupunta lang kami sa tindahan. Kukuha kami ng isang Vox or keyboard na chord, yung ganun. But what I'm just trying to say is this, no? What is important is that you should more or less know what to reproduce. Hindi yung porke lahat gumagamit ng multi-drum microphones, gagayahin din ninyo. Ang Rolling Stones hanggang ngayon, no, are only using 3 microphones. Yung Glyn Johns technique. Isang overhead, isang snare, isang side sa may tom, at saka isang kick. Ako, I use 1 overhead na isa, at saka kick. Tapos. Why? Ang lakas po ng drum kit. Yung hindi electronic, ha? Yung acoustic drum kit, no? So you don't need. So you can actually work with something like 8 faders. 8 faders, okay ka na eh. Secondly, the guitars in a small room like this, and you have, let's say, a cab na D12, hindi mo na kailangan i-line in yun. Pansuporta lang naman yun eh. Di ba? Normally naman, pagdating sa tugtugan sa simbahan, wala naman nag-a-adlib eh. Sa amin, sa Union Church nung araw, when I was part of the worship team, yung aming pastor, palagi niyang sinasabi, never do any guitar solos. Why? It's not part of the worship. Habang nagsusolo ka ba ng gitara, yung mga tao rin, no way, hindi ba? Kasi, you have to understand, as part of the worship team, di ba, ang importante is that you're making the people sing and worship. Hindi kayo as member of the worship team. Hindi kayo as lead nung worship. Hindi kayo yung kayo lang nagga-guide. But in reality, dapat ang kumakanta yung audience because they are the congregation. They are the church. Di ba? And that's one thing that a lot of people forget. Especially dun sa mga praise and worship groups. Ang isa pa yung yung drummer na habang tumutugtog, kailangan ba yun? Nakarinig na ba kayo ng, oh, bless na bless ako, ang ganda ng fill-in ng drummer. Meron bang ganon? No. There are two things. It's either the worship that happens or the word coming from the pastor. Yun naman ang importante dyan eh. Di ba? Pag na-feel ka nun, tapos na ang laban. Okay? Okay, let's go back to... Okay, ang disadvantage naman is that you can't use yung line array, no? You can't use it in shallow rooms. Yung sight lines mo may be obstructed because sayang, wala tayong no? Wala tayong video. Mayroon kasing picture dito. This is the United Evangelical Church of the Philippines. I designed this church about 3 years ago. And we're using Meyer loudspeakers. Ang sponsor nito is a very nice Christian guy. Si Mr. Cecilio Pedro. Ang may-ari ng Happy Toothpaste. He's a very avowed Christian. Si Mr. Pedro, sabi niya sa akin, Mike, ano ba magandang loudspeakers? Sabi ko, well, there's Meyer, there's Acoustics, pwede tayo mag-Nexo. Sabi niya, pwede ba nating i-audition? Pwede ba nating ilagay dito sa simbahan? Papakinggan natin? Sabi ko, oh, sige, di request tayo. So nag-request kami, lahat ng suppliers, naglagay sila ng mga kanilang mga loudspeakers, and pinatugtog. Si Mr. Pedro kasi is also a member of the choral group ng choir ng simbahan. No? So, he's got a musical ear. So sabi niya, ano yan, Mike? Sabi ko, sir, ano yan, Meyer? Tapos sabi niya, maganda ba yan? Eh sabi ko, sa pandinig niyo, kung maganda, di maganda. Pero medyo Rolls Royce ho ang presyo niyan. Sabi ko sa kanya. Sabi niya, kunin natin. Yun ho ang nakakabit sana dito sa sayang hindi niyo makita eh. Ha? Sige. 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 Gusto niyo bang mag-break? Ha? Anyway, okay. Do you have any questions so far? I can jump from one topic to the other kung kailangan. Yes. Taong nagtotono. Yes. Totoo yan. That's actually the reason why it is very important that even the worship team should be knowledgeable. Dapat naiintindihan nila kung anong ginagawa nila. Second, hindi ho yan nakukuha sa lakas. Hindi pa lakasan. Ang tugtugan ho, for the comfort of each and every one. Ang mamaya nga, mayroon ako ituturo sa inyo. It's a very simple express mixing that I teach, that I got from another front of house engineer, na simple lang. Simpleng-simple lang. No? Ang importante kasi, sa tenga eh. Ano ang balanse? That's one thing that you have to understand. Equalization is not about tone, high frequency and low frequency. Hindi ho ganun. No? Hindi nakukuha sa ganun yun. May mga techniques akong ituturo sa inyo regarding equalization. Bibilisan na lang natin mamaya. But these are things that you have to understand. No? And of course, ang sistema kasi niyan, supposedly, and ito nangyayari talaga ito. Ewan ko kung nangyayari sa mga churches nyo, but I've observed this in some churches in Manila, no? Nag-aawa yung technical at saka yung praise and worship. Ayaw ko kung nangyayari sa inyo yun. Sinasabi nung, sasabihin ng praise and worship, hindi, kayo bahala dyan eh. Sasabihin naman nung mga technical, hindi oh, kayo yung ano yan eh. Kayo yung nasa, di ba? See, the thing is, what should be understood is the fact that both are part of the team. Yung technical, nire-reinforce yung tunog nyo sa stage. Pag masama na yung tunog sa stage, masama lahat. You have to understand that garbage in, garbage out. Walang magagawa yung tech kung hindi aayusin yung dito. Dapat nagkakaroon ng cooperation. You know, I've seen a lot of foreign engineers work. No? Alam niyo, sinasabihan nila yung mga talents. Like Paul McCartney, sasabihin nila, Paul, your bass is too hot. Turn it down. Diba? Sasabihan nila. Anong gagawin ni Paul McCartney? Down. Baba siya. Kasi sila yung nandun eh. Sila yung nandun dun sa field mismo. Sila yung nalalaman nila kung ano yung nagiging tunog eh. That's the reason why it is important for them to talents, no? To listen to the guys. And at the same time naman, wag naman yung technical na kami yung bida rito eh, kasi kami yung boss eh. Hindi naman ganoon, di ba? We're supposed to be part of the team. Magkakasama tayo eh. Sama-sama tayo para maganda yung labas. See, in that manner, you are showing natatawa ako because sasabihin ko sana, in that manner, you are showing unity. But anyway, what I'm just trying to say is that dapat cooperation talaga. Di ba? We are not doing praise and worship. We are not singing for ourselves. We are not singing for the congregation. We are singing for the Lord. Di ba? Although the Lord does not need a good sound system or anything like that. What He needs is a pure heart, a good heart. Something that really, goes up to Him and says, oh, yes, I like that. Di ba? But the way it is, kasi, is that when you perform well, pag kunwari, maganda ang performance mo, maganda yung pagkakanta mo, and everything else, everything comes out from the heart. And that is what the Lord wants. Di ba? So, dapat yun ang unang-una na ayusin. Ano yung performance natin dito? Ano yung cooperation? That's actually one of the reasons why we always ask for the Holy Spirit to come, join us and help us when we do praise and worship. Diba? For us to come out with a good performance. Not for ourselves, not for the congregation, but for the Lord. Diba? So, importante yun. Okay, that's one, no? Number 2, dapat yung nag-aayos marunong nakakaintindi. Hindi pihit na lang ng pihit. Yun ang importante. So, whoever is mixing among you guys should learn or should know how to really manipulate sound systems. Like I said, hindi ho yan nakukuha sa lakas. Nakukuha yan sa intelligibility na iintindihan. Yun ang importante. Any other questions before we take a break? Wala na? Yes. Hindi ko masyadong, how? Compared sa, well, normally the way, oo. Yes. Yes. Dapat, it's better kung ganun ang sistema. The reason behind that is specialization. So it's really good kung kunwari yung taong nakabantay talaga sa mixing board, yun ang ginagawa na talaga. Naiintindihan niya kung ano yung ginagawa. In a church situation ngayon, there are things that have to be considered, no? Number one, aside from the mixing guy, dapat mayroon kang graphics guy. Yung graphics guy is the one who comes out with yung mga, di ba, yung mga lyrics and everything else, di ba? Now, in some churches, meron silang ginagamit na, kasi they use cameras, no? Kinukunan din nila yung audience. Minsan, ayaw ko kung dito kinukunan niyo yung audience. But in churches abroad, ang ginagawa nila, yung mga congregation, kinukunan din ng mga reaction shots and everything else. Actually, for several purposes. One of the purposes why they do that, para hindi natutulog yung tao. Kasi makikita ka eh. mamaya nakafocus pala sa'yo, tulog ka. Diba? But, see, so that's two, no? So meron kang switcher, tiga-switch ng cameras. Meron kang graphics, who takes control of the graphics. And then nowadays, merong tinatawag silang broadcast mix. Or somebody who takes care of the streaming. Iba kasi ang mixing ng streaming sa front of house. Magkaiba yan. Magkakaiba, the reason behind that is because we go back into what we hear. Gaya nung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina, pag nandito tayo sa hall na ito, iba yung naririnig natin as compared dun sa naririnig ng mikrofono. So yung mikrofono na pumapasok dun sa streaming, iba ang tunog paglabas sa internet. And of course, the other factor that you have to consider is that hindi lahat ng software, OSB or Zoom or whatever, or YouTube or whatever, hindi lahat yan high fidelity. So you still have to compensate. So somebody has to do that. What I am saying is it does not necessarily mean that the guy doing the board cannot do that. But normally the way it is that dapat separate yung kwarto nung nag-stream compared dun sa front of house. Dapat may sarili siyang kwarto na hindi na-disturb. Hindi niya naririnig yung front of house. Kasi, like I said, magkaiba yung tunog na yun. So, the best way of doing that, if ever, is to separate two mixers. You have two mixers, i-splitin mo yung signal. Yung kunwari palagay natin 24 inputs yung yung front of house mo. Kung pwede, well now you can easily do that because ngayon mga Cat 5 na lang o Dante, okay na eh. Dapat same number of inputs should be on the other board. Now, there's another way of doing it, which is you use stems. Yung stems naman, i-group nung front of house yung iba-ibang elements. For example, palagay natin 4 groups, no? Ang ginamit nung sa yung isang group bass at saka drums. Yung susunod rhythm section, yung isa vocals, yung isa whatever. Yung 4 na yon, mayroong group out yun. Yun ang pupunta ngayon dun sa i-stream. Para dun naman gagawin nung tiga-stream yung balanse. So mas madali kasi 4 lang yung binabalanse mo. Of course, the more groups, the better. No? You get what I'm trying to say? You understand? More or less, meron na kayong idea? Kasi nga, you have to remember na yung nasa loob ng simbahan at saka yung sa internet, magkaiba talaga ang tunog. Kaya pangit normally yung internet. Kasi ang nangyayari, sinusundan nila yung nandito sa loob. Okay? Any other questions? Yes.
Ayun po. Ang concern ko po kasi sa live stream po namin, may mga pagkakataon, yung overall volume sobrang hina. Minsan naman, balancing nga pero mahina. Minsan naman, parang okay yung volume niya pero hindi naman okay yung pagkakabalanse ng namin, mixing. Meron po bang type of hardware na, kasi po di ba merong standard na DB ang 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 live audio, ang live stream, saka po iba't ibang mga platform. So kung ito po ay Facebook or YouTube, ano po kaya yung pwede nyong ma-suggest na parang roadmap namin to get there, na ma-achieve po yung consistency po ng
In terms of balance.
Opo.
Yun ang
Yung parang po, halimbawa po ngayon, pinakinggan ko sa smartphone ko, balanse pero mahina. Nakatodo yung volume. Sa susunod na week naman po, pinakinggan ko, okay yung volume, pero parang lagi siyang nasa peak. Hindi ko po kasi alam kung ano yung tama na masasabi
nababasag,
natin.
yung ganun. Okay. Well, the way to do it is that normally kasi, especially if you're using digital mixers, may mga compressor limiters yung mga yan. No? So you compress your out or you limit the yung output. So by itself, yung compressors, kinukontrol na niya ang volume. Ngayon, kung sa cellphone ko, pangit ang tunog, pero sa cellphone mo maganda, nasa cellphone ho yun. Wala tayong magagawa ron. Oo. Ganun ang sistema. We cannot really totally control, no? Pero yung pagkabalanse, like for example, the voice of the pastor versus palagay natin yung music, yung ganun, that can be controlled internally. Pero paglabas niya kasi, pag nandun na sa net, wala na tayong control doon. Although USB tuloy, OBS, I think has some manipulations that you can actually do. And you can actually broadcast in stereo. Yung mga ganon, no? So, all you have to do is study lang yung mga features ng mga yon. And then make experiments. Mag-experiment kayo para malaman nyo kung ano yung magandang tunog. No? Ganon ang sistema. Yung pagbabalanse kasi, ganito, no? The other thing that you have to understand, if you're the one streaming, you have to have either headphones or small loudspeakers. Doon yung papakinggan yung mix nyo. No? Kasi, gaya sa amin, pag sa TV, for example, pag nagmi-mix kami for television, and this is for all television stations that I've worked with, that I've consulted, lahat pinapakinggan namin yung aming broadcast mix sa TV monitor. What I'm trying to say is that kukuha kami ng TV set, doon namin papakinggan kung maganda yung tunog. Kung maganda ang tunog doon sa ordinary TV set, maganda. Kung pangit, pangit. So we try to achieve a very good mix using that. Sa mga TV studios kasi, mas importante yung TV mix kaysa yung front of house mix. Kasi yung front of house mix, tao lang naman na nanonood sa studio yun eh. Pero yung milyon-milyon na nanonood, nanonood sa TV. Diba? So the same thing. You have to monitor your output, making use of how people would be listening to your broadcast. Kami, for example, my family, pag nag-online kami, virtual service, ganon, mayroon kaming maliit na JBL na doon namin pinapakinggan. So yun ang parang ganon ang sistema. Pakinggan nyo sa ganon. Kung maganda ang labas nyo, using those kind of monitoring equipment, that means maganda. Okay, the other thing also, since yung sa mga headphones and everything else, normally walang bass yan eh. So forget bass. In other words, wag niyo itotodo yung baho. Mababasag lang ang Normally nga, pag nagmi-mix ako ng boses, no? Lahat, unang-una, high-pass filter. Alam niyo yung high-pass filter, no? Okay. Pag high-pass mo, that means it's only the highs that pass. Kaya high-pass. Yung low pass, that means lahat ng bass lang ang lalabas kasi low pass, you pass the low. Okay? You get it? Ano yan eh, sa audio, common sense eh. Okay, so high pass, pipindutin mo yung high pass. Ngayon, ang boses ng lalaki, ang lowest fundamental ng boses ng lalaki is about 150 hertz. Okay? Ang babae is about 200. Okay? So that means you don't put information lower than 150 hertz. So pagdating sa equalization, cut mo na yung 150. Kaya, never put voice sa subwoofer. Never. Because ang nilalagay nyo, pag naglagay kayo ng boses sa subwoofer, ang nilalagay nyo doon, noise. Because ang crossover points nito would be somewhere within 190, 120. Asan yung pinakamababang baso profundo ng lalaki? Wala ron. So you never. Ang subwoofer, ginagamit lang yan pang effect eh. Kaya SFX yan eh. O EFX, special effects. Yan ang yan ang use ng subwoofer. Ang nilalagay lang sa subwoofer normally, would be your bass and the kick. And that's it. Pag ako nagmi-mix, lahat ng instrumento naka-high pass. Naka-roll off yung low frequency. Ano mangyayari? Mas klaro. And that's the other thing. Do not be afraid of the high frequencies. Yung high frequency, yan ang nagbibigay, ito mga SS. Ito medyo sobra lang eh. But yung mga high frequency kasi, yan ang nagbibigay ng intelligibility. Ang low frequency, walang binibigay na information yan sa intelligibility. Ang intelligibility frequency aspect would be from 250 hertz all the way up. Ganun lang, dun lang kayo maglaro. Kung nagkakaroon ng howling, nagkakaroon ng konting feedback, work on your, let's say, 250 to 500 hertz. Pag medyo in-off mo ng konti yon, nagbawas ka ng konti ron, mawawala yung howling eh. Mawawala yung feedback. Contrary to what people believe in, na nagfi-feedback dahil lang sa high frequency. Normally, ang usual tendency of people, pag nag-feedback, ang hinahatak, high frequency. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's not true. Because there is such a thing as fundamental frequency and nagdo-double yun. Harmonics ang tawag doon. From 60 hertz, naging 120, 120 plus 60, 180. Ganun yan, 180 plus 60, so forth and so on. Yung pala, kaya, hindi ba, for example, meron kayong loudspeaker na ganyang kaliit, no? Pero, bakit may bass? Naisip na ba ninyo yan? Yung mga bagong labas ngayon na maliliit na ganyang kalalaki, may bass. Bakit? Kasi what you're hearing is not bass frequency. What you are hearing is actually a harmonic of the bass frequency. Kung yung maliit na yun has a, let's say, a fundamental of, let's say, 60 hertz, yung harmonic ng 60 hertz, kunwari, palagay natin 60, 120, 180, 180 plus 60, so that's 240 plus 60, that's 300. Baka yung naririnig nyo, 300 hertz. Ganun yun. Kasi you have to understand that the brain can interpret what you hear and sometimes what you see. That's the other thing. You never rely, sa audio, you never rely on seeing the waveforms. Never rely on the waveforms. The waveforms are only there as guides. But you have to understand that they are not the right representation of the waves. Which reminds me, there are two kinds of sound waves or sound types. Pag low frequency, 500 hertz down, they're called sound waves. Pag 500 hertz up, they're called sound rays. Okay? So, pag sinabi mo yung, pare pakiayos ng sound ray, yung engineer nun, alam na niya na it has to be 500 hertz up. Kasi para tayong mga doktor. Pag nag-uusap tayo, dapat puro numero. Minus 5 dB yan eh. Kulang ng ganito eh. Dapat ang DFS mo nandito lang sa ganito. See, if we have that kind of a language and when we understand each other, nagkakaintindihan. Hindi yung puro sagit-sit, tanggalin nga mo nga yung konting hangin dun sa itaas. Ano yun? Ano yung hangin? Di ba? Ano yung hangin? And then the other thing is, bakit hello? Bakit test? Bakit hey? Alam niyo ba kung bakit? Hindi ginagawa yun na ganun lang, hey, 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 test, test, hey, hey. Di ba? Alam niyo kung bakit? Hey. Pag pumutok yun, intelligibility, test. Yun ang rason mo doon. So these are simple things that you should understand as audio guys. No? Hindi yung hey, 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 hey ka ng hey, 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 hey. Hindi ganun. Kasi yung see, kung yung ganun mo, nag-pop, that means there's something wrong. Kaya test. At saka yung at saka yung F. Yung pop. Now, there are a lot of ways of handling pops and everything else. Sa recording studio, ang ginagawa namin, pag may problema sa mga ganon, hindi namin tinututok yung mikropono sa bibig. Nilalagay namin yung pop, 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 pop. Ano pa ba? Pop, 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 pop. Get it? So like I said, by making use or using the microphone, you can actually equalize yourselves. You don't have to fill in. So, as talents or as part of the praise and worship team, dapat alam nyo yung mga techniques. So palagay natin, nagsi-second voice kayo. Pagkatapos napansin nyo, nangingibabaw yung boses nyo, nilayo yung microphone nyo. See, this is about a few dBs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Diba? And there is no such thing as when you hit a high note, like yung gano'n, binababa yung microphone. That's not true. Alam niyo kung bakit? Alam niyo kung bakit ginaganon nila yung microphone? Kasi wala sa tono. Yes. Like, for example, okay. Ito. Pag ginanong ko yung microphone ko, pagkatapos binaba ko, ang tono ko pala, half note. Yung totoo, half note, Hindi nyo narinig. Di ba? So, the microphone can take as much as about more than 100 dB, 120 dB. So, maski na magsisigaw ka dyan, pareho pa rin yun because the human voice can only go so much. The most siguro it can go is about 85 dB. Sa yung normal voice natin, like for example, ito, pag nag-uusap tayo, it's about 70 dB. Ang boses ng tao nandun lang. Okay? So if you're trying to hit a note, yung mga member ng dito, ng worship team, hit the note. Huwag ilayo yung microphone. Kaya pag may nakita yung singer na nagaganon, ibig sabihin nun, wala sa tono yun. Ang dami kong kilalang ganon. Mga kilala nyo na supposed to be magagaling. Any more? So we break tayo. Pwede na ba? O sige, break tayo in 10 minutes. Mahaba pa eh. May natutunan ba kayo? Okay. Incidentally, I am the chairman of the Audio Engineering Society section Philippines, no? If mayroon kaming webpage, not my webpage, mayroon kaming Facebook page na you can actually get some information in there about mga ganyan, mixing, about miking, and you can ask questions there. No? All you have to do is just get in there, and you can actually be a member of the Facebook page. But if you want to become a member of the Audio Engineering Society, which is a worldwide organization, you know, kaya lang mayroong membership fee yun, but that's recognized worldwide. We have a lot of Filipino members who have actually successfully did a lot of work abroad already, and they're members of the Audio Engineering Society Philippine section. So that's another resource that you can actually go to. And then there is another one that you can actually go to, yung Audio Guys Ministry. May mga techniques din doon, kami pinopost and everything else. No, additional knowledge. Okay? So 10-minute break tayo. We go back at 4:30. Hindi pa tayo nakakalahati eh. Ang problema lang nito, at the end of the session, malilito kayo lalo. But you know, I was just thinking while I was coming over here, kung okay sa inyo, sa akin okay, we can have another session. No? This is part of the organization's and also parang ministry, and it's also part of my ministry that we try and help out churches. We have done a lot of seminars on church audio, and we regularly do this pag mayroong alam niyo yung Music Manila, magkakaroon itong June. Itong June daw meron eh, or July, no? Sa World Trade Center. But I just don't know kung maraming mag-a-attend because as of right now, may problema pa rin eh, di ba? But anyway, kung mamaya, let's make a decision. Let's go over what I have in store for today, and then kung okay lang sa inyo, pag-usapan natin. Okay? All right, thank you.